The chat room is here, which is fantastic. Hi, chat room. Good morning. Welcome to Hal Sparks Mornings, Mega Worldwide. It's not just our regular morning show where we deal with everything that's the fire hose of news, but also Rob Glenn is joining us from Chicago of Root Design, of course,
Oh,
and our dear
hello.
friend. There you go. You were busy being doing computer stuff, and it's Friday. I on a bunch of fronts, and I'm going to declare a few things right out of the gate
Okay.
that are one that's primarily annoying me that I am seeing everywhere as part of a news trend, which is, and I'm going to put my foot down on this. There is no AI bubble. The idea that an AI bubble is about to burst, we're at a point where people were okay. The .com boom and what became like the tech bubble that burst around that time had a lot to do with the fact that everybody was going to invest in their URL and buy coca-cola.com and all these kind of things, and there was a huge portion of why the money fell out of it was this idea that people would be able to squat on these names and then ransom them to the companies at one point. There was a big window of
Right.
that where most of the money that was going to be made in the rush in the .com world was not in the creation of websites and in the software like Dreamweaver and people making their own sites and the money that would come through them, which by the way, if you want to see how that worked out, look at Amazon, Etsy, eBay. It did work. What the bubble part was is that there's gonna be this kind of like junk hacker zone of people barnacling on it and making money on the slide just by like buying up for $2 all these I don't know IBM.com and then selling it back to them for $1 million, and some of them used that the promise of that money to borrow money to create their own companies. Like they literally were leveraging it. There was this idea you could, I own Coca-Cola.org and they're going to have to buy it. So, go to a VC capitalist or somebody like that and go, give me 100 grand so I can start my thing. And then I'll pay you back with that money or I'll have profit coming in because I also own this. This is an asset. And it didn't work out. And a bunch of these companies just started to collapse. And then there was like this Armando Montalongo, people who own 12 houses by borrowing on the one before it, that if you miss one payment, the rest of them go away. That was effectively what caused it. The rest of the internet stood strong. Like it didn't, there wasn't a bubble. It was just a bunch of randos, trying to make money around the edges of it, like how you could kind of scam this money out of the new internet wave. The mechanics of it are obviously strong. Like I'm on it right now. People are watching it on their phones right now. It is integral to everything that people use in every aspect of their digital life. So the idea that it burst is a little silly, but it did burst around people getting out over their skis financially and all that kind of stuff. Okay, there's a similar thing with some AI stuff that is all talk, no action, which I would say is the chat aspect of things, getting people to sign on just to talk to a bot. That has a limited runway. It's great, and you and I use it mechanically for things where it's helpful. But if you're just looking for a friend and you're going to buy a digital friend, we're not to the point where it can replace a real relationship, and we're not because it's awkward and and gets a lot of stuff wrong. So you'll never it's not there yet to complete that task, and it's not enticing enough for the average person to make people rush in and go, oh, I got to have one of these chit chat machines, right? And so that's where they think the bubble is going to burst, is that chatbots are the thing. And my argument is they're about 20% of what's actually going on with AI, as huge as that is. That really what's going on behind the scenes is movement towards video generation so that media companies can make stuff and do special effects cheaper and more impressively and quicker more than anything else. So if you have a sci-fi TV show, you can crank out episodes in hours, not months. That's a big push where it's going. And then agriculture, science, law, all these areas and I'll have some examples today. There's huge advances being made to replace what are effectively all the paralegals in a legal firm, or add 100 digital paralegals to a law firm, or add, if you've got a bunch of scientists, but you need somebody to sit there and pay attention to this one chemical expression over the course of several days and take copious notes on exactly what happens in its measurement so that you can tell when it worked or when it didn't work in whatever process pharmaceutical reason you're trying to hunt this thing down. You couldn't ever have enough people to sit there and watch this and observe it, but now you can. And so it's flooding into all those areas. So, Rob, tell me how I'm wrong that there's an AI bubble and we're all going back to whittling.
Well, to
All
say
right.
there's no bubble, like it goes against the concept of the fact that like there's a ballooning of money going into places that are it's going to get lost, and that's still happening. Like,
Sure.
but so to your argument, you started with the URL positioning yourself with Coca-Cola.com.
Yeah.
Nobody was like hijacking Coca-Cola, but maybe as a placeholder, like the Pets.com, the
Yes.
sort of
That's right. Every
Pets.com as
every first
to
name,
your
every last name, like people were just buying I jumped in and got HalSparks.com right away, but Sparks.com was already taken almost instantly, right? Hal.com was gone because of the computer instantly, right? So,
okay, so Pets.com could be a good example of what you're trying to say in the sense that a company was created around the idea that if I just have Pets.com, then that's sort of like a really strong position on this internet thing where everybody's just going to flood in. They're going to buy stuff for their pets because pets is a great market.
yep,
And so the money came in there because a bunch of people were selling something more than they had. They were
right,
trying to sell a vision of a future that they didn't even know they didn't even know the details of what the future would become. But they
right.
were like, well, this has got to work because this internet is so great. So money will
Hmm.
eventually flood into pets.com. So that's the bubble. The bubble is that they were wrong, like, or they
Right,
were too
right,
early,
right,
or they structured their financing wrong, or whatever the thing is.
right.
Um, uh, so,
Yeah,
so I think the point you're trying to make is even if there is such a thing as the AI bubble, and even if it bursts, and even if a whole bunch of people lose their ass on it,
yeah,
AI is still a thing like the internet, and
right.
it's going to live on. Just like
Yes,
the railroads are a thing, and there was
exactly.
a bubble around the railroads, and people won and people lost, and that we had the railroads, right?
Right. And
It's the same
the
thing,
railroads were still integral to an entire industrial age. Like they brought about
right?
pre-car, post-wagon, the trains across this country as the officially like the first attempt at an intercoastal highway system. It was the train system, and that was the engine of almost all growth at a certain point.
Yeah,
Once you
yeah,
connected the east and west, that was enough to make business across the country bloom along the way, and even for a
yeah. So
time,
this,
even if that shifted later. There's a place in Nevada when I was driving up real quick. When I drove up to Jackpot to do this Nerd Halen show, you could fly into like Idaho and then take a 2 hour like van ride down to Jackpot, or which is and you have it's a connecting flight. There's no direct flights to this Idaho airport, and so it was like 9 to 10 hours on on a plane or an airports and in a car to get there, and I could drive there in 7. So I just decided to drive because I like it. And one of the towns you pass through when you go through there is an old train town, and there's still a track there, and there's still a train that goes back and forth locally between two stations. I think it even goes into Colorado or something like that. But it's a cute, almost like quaint old train that runs on that track as a tourist thing. And the town though is, but for that little tourist ride the old train thing, wouldn't exist anymore. And yet it was a very important shipping hub, and transportation hub for that part of the country, for the entire Northwest, for a period of time. That would be an example of the train, bubble bursting over the course of a long time, but at the same time, the remnants even keep that thing alive. Just there. So sorry, I held
Yeah,
that
so
little side story.
there's going to be bets made along the way. People are speculating about trying to figure out where to put your money so that you end up with Amazon in 20 years and not pets.com in
Right.
5 losing your money, right? That's
Yeah.
all it
Right.
is.
That's right.
But in terms of like where we're at with that, this is maybe somewhat different because there's already a stranglehold on infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
uh, in terms of the chips, let's call it. Like NVIDIA is basically it. So in order to unseat NVIDIA, you've got to come bottom up and somehow create either a cheaper, cheaper version of what they're doing, one
Right.
that performs significantly better,
Right.
or more likely what'll happen is you would have to come up with a different way to to a different type of chip or a different thing completely that isn't a GPU
Mm-hmm.
that is so much better in running AI, and you got to do it early, that then you unseat NVIDIA because you completely black swan
Right.
their uh, their GPU, and you're like, oh, it's this other thing, this like unobtainium thing,
Right.
and it just so happens that if I use it this way, then I can triple the output of AI or something like that. So
Right.
everybody's betting on the fact that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That if I just suck up all the chip processing in the world, and then I get power infrastructure, which takes a long time. So they're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to get the big pieces on the chessboard
Right.
and then hold on to those and hope to God that it doesn't completely go away because some other thing unseated it.
Right. So there's a couple of stories around. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. This was from Bloomberg the other day. There are a couple of stories I want to jump on. This is one of the big ones. Where's this? Yeah, let me move this up here. AI data centers are sending power bills soaring. Wholesale electricity costs as much as 267% more than it did 5 years ago in areas near data centers. That's being passed on to customers. Now, I went and looked immediately afterwards because I'm not far from Switch here in Vegas. And Switch is a big cloud computing company, and they have just offset, a lot of, they're picking up a lot of AI slack. They were just kind of like a cloud storage facility that was growing hand over fist. But now they're also acting as a data center for some of the AI until their, giant facilities are built. And I
Mm-hmm.
checked, to see if it was affecting my power. And they have a contract for renewables that tie to these three big solar generators outside of town and the hydropower from the dam, so that they don't
Okay.
add on to other stuff. That's why they came here, was because Vegas has such a huge energy draw. There's already sort of an ancillary overflow because they're expecting 20 more casinos over the next 10 years or something. So the output here is fine. But in upstate New York, in Texas, where the grid is already weak, they're building these things, and the power part of it is going to come later. So yet another thing that Trump is going to have to sell to his people, where he promised to bring down the cost of everything, and yet at the same time, it's driving these prices up. This is
Yeah.
one in Virginia, and then there's the story that anecdotally the story that they tell in this is that there's a blind man who it has a lot of devices in his house for getting around, and his power bill just went 267% up because of the draw of this data center that's suddenly there sucking up all the power. And that's not even
Yeah.
a
So
major one.
this seems like an easy one to me. This is a pivot away from, or should be a pivot away from tax the rich instead, like a
Yes.
higher tax. What am I trying to
Bracket.
say? Not
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah.
The when you make
Per,
more, you
a
pay more.
percentage. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like your bracket, a higher tax
tax
bracket.
bracket. Sorry,
Sure, that's
It's
okay.
a little. I'm off
Yeah.
today. Anyway, so instead of the tax bracket, the progressive tax rate, I
Yeah.
think what could happen right now is you basically make them pay for their power such
Hmm.
that it doesn't change it for anybody else. Because if their draw is causing everybody's pricing, like make them pay for everybody
Right.
else's price increase.
Right.
And that's how I think, to me, that's a very clear, direct way. You use it, you pay for it. Like that's not even a tax. That's a that's
Yeah.
a cost of goods. Like that's an input, to your
Right.
process. And so the idea of like that this entire industry just gets this stuff for free is totally insane.
Hmm.
And I think that's a great way to go at it is if it costs you if it costs in order to run your data center, it
Yeah.
costs you X. You pay X, that's it. And that X can't affect your neighbors and their power bills.
Right.
I think it should be that
Yeah, I
simple.
completely agree. So and like I said, part of this growth thing is the adoption factor. Is that companies like you might offer a service as an AI company, and then adoption goes through the roof immediately. And one of the best examples scientifically is Claude. Is Anthropic's AI is really leaning towards being the research and research assistant and productivity for like the hard sciences and law. That's where they're driving this thing. Less about the conversational aspect of it, because they consider that the easy part that will be solved by somebody else, and then they could just kind of slap it onto theirs. But working out its kinks in terms of helping with stuff that matters, right? Well, as soon as that showed some level of efficacy that has a mistake window close to what an intern or a new employee would make, that everybody jumped on it entirely, even if it didn't mean purging who was working for them. And you do have some like job, like I would argue there's a lot of talk about job hiring, and layoffs and that kind of stuff. I think that has a lot more to do with Trump's tariff stuff than it does with AI. I think, quite frankly, people can't project what their cost of business is going to be 6, 8, 10 months out. So they're not hiring for next spring or even for the Christmas cycle if they can't tell how much everything's going to cost. So they're going to try and cut it. And anywhere they can do that, they'll do it with physical efficiency, and fewer people. That's what they're going to end up doing. We're just going to have to suffer in that area and focus on advertising, which you can make up with other stuff, which I wouldn't say is AI doing the job. It's that they're only doing jobs they can do with AI. They're only taking
Yeah.
on extra work. Okay. But this,
So can you
yeah,
pause for 1 second? So there's two things. I saw somebody say in the chat, the wealthy should pay for this. And my point here is that instead of saying the wealthy should pay, you say investors in AI should pay for their
right.
product,
Yeah.
for the production of their product. And then there's a second one, and I think this kind of dovetails into it. I lost the person's name. Oh, Donald Schilling said, usually in life, the more you use, the rate is less. And he's like, that's so the normal thing is if I make a widget
Right.
and I use metal, and the more widgets I make, the more metal I buy, I should be getting the metal cheaper. But so AI in this case is a widget. It's got input costs,
Right.
and power is the inverse of metal here in this case. The
Yeah.
more you use, in theory, the more expensive it is because if you start to get to it's like sort of like the reverse supply and demand problem, right? Like the
Right.
more demand there is, the higher it
Well,
goes because
there's
you
ubiquitous
need to,
demand on energy, whereas steel or
yeah,
something like that, like the neighborhood doesn't need, like every house isn't needing a certain amount of steel to
right,
run their house, right? And so you're buying a commodity off of someone's, their deck, off of some
right,
port somewhere, and that's why you get a break on it. But energy is something that everybody needs.
right. So in this case, like we can just use the market to fix the problem.
Yeah,
So make their energy more expensive because they use more. Like it's
yeah,
that simple. Because it's the input to the thing, and the more the inputs cost, then the more money your app costs that you mentioned. Like whatever you build off of that infrastructure that you then go sell, the more that becomes. And what happens effectively is like that app's got to be really good if you're going
hmm,
to pay $50 a month for it.
yeah,
And it's a way to like hold that entire business accountable. Like
Right.
if you can't make a thing that somebody will buy what it costs to produce it, then you don't have a thing, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and that's the key.
And if you're, well, again, though, we have several examples, and I made this point about like, petroleum versus renewables, like yesterday or day before yesterday, talking about how that, like, everybody takes for granted that oil pays for itself or what have you, and that renewables
Right.
somehow need subsidies from the government and support. When oil, absolutely in its early days for adoption, needed tons of support from the federal government. And so whether you had a car or not, your taxes were paying somebody who did, to keep the cost of gas down so that we could get more cars on the road, because we knew the benefit long term would be a part of that. That was where we were literally subsidizing these things. Now we're not technically doing that with AI, except in, like, I guess, loan guarantees and the like for them to build new facilities. That's no different than sports stadiums and stuff like that, or tax breaks on it. But where there is need for perhaps a subsidy or a secondary support that's either got to come from them if they're not profitable yet, but we know they're going to benefit society long term, right? That's the argument. Then the taxpayer should be picking up the slack, because it's something you use across the entire country. It shouldn't land in somebody's lap because they lived 6 blocks away from one of these data centers in Maryland, and this blind dude who's having to, see the price of electricity in his area go up 267%. That shouldn't be on him. That should be on the general public, since we're all going to benefit the same way we did with petroleum. That would be the theory.
I think, but I think differently. I think it
Sure.
shouldn't be on the public at all. It shouldn't be
Right.
subsidized. It should be on the people who invested in it. Somebody
Right.
said, yes, make energy cost more. We should campaign on that. I think they're being sarcastic.
Yeah.
I'm meaning make it cost more for the people using it the
Yeah.
most, which is AI, so that it doesn't get more expensive for everybody else. It's effectively it's a market driven tax. Like,
Yeah.
your inputs
Your
cost more than you are paying
yeah.
right now.
Yeah, that a corporate
So
draw on this particular thing that's, reaches a certain amount of, if your draw exceeds a certain kilowatt level, then, you can, especially during peak hours, where, like, we already do that, by the way. There is a version of this already, which
yeah,
is
sure.
while your lights are on during the day, in a business or in a house, or you're running your air conditioning or whatever, that's a peak time, and so the price of energy goes up. That happens to the regular consumer already. At night, it's cheaper, and so if you have a battery system in your house, you can draw power during the night and use it during the day, and it lowers your energy costs. There is an argument that for AI companies to have to do something along those lines, where they have to have a battery system where they're drawing during the night, and they're paying, if they're not going to pay a lot more than anyone else, because it's an extraordinary draw. So that's something that will have to be worked out. It's probably going to have to be worked out state to state, where, California, where there's a bunch of these, or
Yeah.
Arizona, or Virginia or North Carolina, and I think even Georgia, they're building these facilities, and they're going to draw on the power grid in those areas for a period of time. It's going to outpace everything else. There is it's a massive draw. So at some point, I think our answer, if I can paraphrase what we're talking about, is a progressive cost structure for AI when it moves in, because the draw is so extraordinary. If the benefit isn't going to the community, I think one of the ways you could probably offset that is freeing up services, and this will increase the draw on the AI, and actually use more energy, but probably marginally compared to its national or global use, is because this is also a global use problem. That a lot of, you think of it as like, well, it's OpenAI, it's ChatGPT, it's in the country, and therefore, people all over the United States are using it. That's what's driving up the thing. But you've got hundreds of millions of users worldwide that are not paying the energy costs that are happening in the United States on the cost of the service, because it's set at a price point that doesn't have to deal with that yet, right? And it might even be that there's a point where, since you're drawing on the American grid, if you have an account on ChatGPT or Anthropic or any of these other ones, and you live in India or Macedonia or Europe anywhere, you pay a higher price because you have to deal with some of the power draw that's happening in another country. That's a secondary effect. So it could be passed on to users outside the area it's being used, and it can also be passed on to the investors to go, you're not going to see a return on this. Now, some of it already is, for the record. Some of it's the power company's algorithm that's causing the rise because it's designed for, if there's a spike in use, it spreads it across everybody instead of the direct draw from these companies. And it's one of the reasons why I think Trump and everyone around him is talking about power sites right next to these places, because it's the only way to answer it without redesigning how everybody pays for power. Like,
Yeah, I mean they're literally saying we're going to use a facility that's either currently not in use or take it over altogether and just be
right.
that's our power station and we're responsible for it. They're kind of going down that route. Somebody said something about Ohio and that industrial locations pay a different rate and AI data centers should as well. That's the point I'm
Yep.
trying to make.
Yep.
I have a commercial facility here. We have machines. We run, a lot of power. We run it all the time, 24 hours a day. The power is more expensive during the day than it is at night, just as you said. And my bill for the daytime power is probably twice that as if I had a house. Um,
Right.
and I just know that's my cost. Like
Yeah.
I run a shop, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what the cost is. And that's built into the price of my products.
Right.
AI should have the same problem. Like they should have the same responsibility, I should say.
Agreed. Yeah. And
Um,
a lot of cases,
Otherwise, we're
yeah,
like
I think a lot of cases
all
they
I'm saying
do.
is we're like
Yeah.
secretly subsidizing them, or
Yes, absolutely. And even worse, the locals are secretly subsidizing them, while the rest of the country is probably using it more than they are. That you literally have, like in Virginia, for example, more than likely the data centers there deal with a lot of government work in DC. Same thing in Maryland. That there's a huge draw from K Street, from the government itself, from congressional offices, from lobbyist groups, so whoever's using AI, and in mass media groups around these things, any of the organizational aspects of it, and that just DC alone is power drawing out of these areas. But the facilities aren't in DC. It's proper. But the close by ones will be, because of the milliseconds of travel that you're trying to get to speed up every micro second counts, every millisecond counts. Um, for example, Switch here, one of their big advertising things is it's 5 milliseconds to Los Angeles. That they talk about how the travel speed is increasing, and there is along the freeway here. There's this black hose that you can see going along the freeway now. That is newly laid. They're going to bury it. It's already connected. It's already working. It's newly laid, cloud and AI connectivity from data
like
centers.
fiber
Both.
optics or something.
Yes, yeah. It's this big, and it's full of fiber optic. And some other secondary backup cables. So
Is there like is there a tube in the middle that sends baby spine juice?
Yes, yeah, adrenochrome. Yeah, there's an adrenochrome straw in the middle of it, because that's how it's all run. They're all powered with
That's how we secretly pay for it.
yeah, it's just shoveling babies into a furnace. That's how it works, according to Roseanne, anyways. But that thing is running all the way down the 15 right now, into what is the eastern part of Los Angeles County, like Inland Empire, where the bullet train was going to go. That area, there are a ton of data centers there. Some of them run by Amazon, some of them run by others, and it's about that connectivity. There is so much work being done in these areas that is some of the stuff that Trump is counting on patching the holes. That's where his trillions of investment idea. I
Yeah.
think I figured out where he got that from. I think I figured it out. There's been a ton of talk around robotics and about AI, about how there's $15 trillion going to be added to the economy in the next 10 years from these things.
Okay.
That's been people have been talking about that as a layer of things for the last 2 years. It has nothing to do with the invested money at all. And the example I would give is that Figure One just got or Figure the company Figure for its Figure Two Helix system just got $1 billion of cash investment, which extrapolates to $38 billion for the worth of the company. So what that means is that's all they need. That seed money will help them build the thing that builds the thing that builds the thing that will lead them to being worth $38 billion in their projection. Now, all companies do operate on this level, but in AI, it's exponential in a lot of cases because of the speed of the growth and because of where it goes. So you might have built robots, in one case to work on in auto plants, like those big arms that you can now buy for like $200 on eBay that used to assemble cars at factories in the 90s. But you could only sell them to factories like that. They were single-use robots. And they were limited in their programming and limited in their scope, right? The idea is that humanoid robots or shipping robots or the kind of those little trucky robots they use in Amazon facilities, those things you could sell all over the place. Like I mean, people could have technically one of those in their house the way that we all kind of have a furniture dolly sitting somewhere in the house. And that you only, oh, we're going to move, so plug it in, or we'll rent one, and a moving company will show up and guys will just set the furniture on the thing and it'll drive it up and put it in the car and it'll, in the vehicle and go, this is where the couch goes, right? That kind of stuff. That's where they're looking because you can't, these big like arms they used to make, there was no way to extrapolate that out to like, oh, everybody's going to have one do their dishes. Like there'll be an arm next to the sink and that's what we're going to do. There was no way to do that. But with humanoid robots and Roomba-like robots that mow the grass, that move shit around, that people can see a longer runway on that stuff. And that's where this money comes from. So when you look at what Trump's like $17 trillion, that's all based on about $1 trillion worth of projected expense and over the next 10 years or the next 5 years by all of these companies, $300 billion, $200 billion facilities and that kind of stuff, which is coming directly from investors. And the reason they're doing it in the United States is largely for safety and the legal aspect of the depth of this technology so that you're not selling these chips to the Chinese military. That's it. It has nothing to do, there's not $17 trillion being dumped in the country. What they mean is 1.5 will be turned into 17, we think, on all these fronts. And if one company fucks up and falls away, the rest of them will pick up the slack. That's where the number is coming from. That's why it keeps growing, too. Because every time they add somebody going, I'm building a $200 billion facility over the next 5 years, from investors, by the way, not because, they like Trump's America all of a sudden, or because of grants created by the Biden administration under the CHIPS and Science Act, that extrapolates out to people projecting a bigger and bigger fantasy number of how much money they're going to make.
Also, the current economy is $30 trillion. So in 10 years, with inflation,
right?
And just if you just did anything, whatever you do, in theory, we should grow because that's what everybody's logic is. So we're almost there all by ourselves without AI. Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So
he's
pick a number that we're going to be at no matter what we do.
Exactly. Yeah. As long as there's not a massive planetary collapse, or even if there is to some degree for a time being, you're still going to be the only game in town if your last functioning society's standing. So they're all like, even the Peter Thiels of this world who are hoping for Armageddon because he thinks he'll live in a hollowed out mountain in Colorado like he's in a fucking Ayn Rand fanfic. Even those fuckers expect that whether we call it monetary wealth, this will be the wealthiest place to be because it'll have all the stuff, right? That everything will basically be free for most Americans, except the ones they kick out for being lazy or too brown. Like, I don't know what the plan is, but it seems like that's where they're going. I will say, I want to show you real quick in this, and we'll address this. This is from the Wall Street Journals, and this ties to people's sort of fear of what AI is going to do about firing people. And there's been a lot of jobs that have gone away, but the question is hiring went down as well. There's a weakening of the job market on a bunch of fronts that always happens, especially as you get a anti-union, anti-labor friendly administration, that you can start firing people and get away with it. That's another thing too. You can end people's contracts and all kinds of stuff because they won't have recourse, because Trump's put judges in that will protect them when they get a lawsuit about firing people, because he wants to fire a bunch of federal workers. Also, the firing of a bunch of federal workers, which they've been doing a ton of, also softens the jobs numbers. But behind the job weaknesses, hints of productivity revival, is AI the reason? This is the artificial intelligence investment boom resembles the tech spree that kicked off a surge in labor-saving efficiency 3 decades ago. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and it has a lot to do with what are called AI agents. Now, this was less of a big deal, AI agents, when they first came on the scene. And I don't know if you've used any whatsoever. I've used a light version, I would say, which is like a research and prep part of it, that will go look up stuff and go, it's like scheduling an AI prompt almost. Like, hey, on Thursday, ask yourself this question and give me the answer. I don't want to have to wake up in the morning every Thursday and go, hey, today's plan is this. Send me this information every Thursday. Update it on the regular, which is just schedule. Again, really simply, it's not a lot of programming. It's not smart. It's just schedule to ask yourself this question on Thursday and don't ask it till then. And then give me the answer at 8:30 a.m. None of that is high order programming. It's something somebody with an AI could have coded themselves in an afternoon. But it became very useful. I use it when I use ChatGPT a lot for stuff that I have on the regular. If I need to look up news stories or something like that and I tell it what sources I trust and want to hear from, and it just goes and looks there, which is cool. It doesn't stop me from going and looking on my own and finding other stories, but it gets the baseline covered, right? I don't have to go hunt the normal stuff down. I can do that. It's really good. But so I wouldn't call that agent work. Have you used anything that even remotely is like works in the agent area, where most people talk about it like scheduling plane ticket, flights and buying plane tickets and that kind of shit, or buying things for you?
I'm currently building. So we launched a new product about a month ago, and the number of emails, like so we have two ways to speak to people. One is just through Instagram, because we have a really good Instagram presence. In Meta, the business suite, there's like tools that you can use that will sort of like guess at what the answer should be.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody asks you a question or sends you a DM, a lot of our stuff comes in through DMs. It'll
Right.
sort of say, here's what we suggest you should say back to them, but
Right.
you're still a human in the loop, right?
Right.
So what I want to do is build my own version of that for our emails. The emails that we get that are direct emails. So somebody goes to the site and sends this message, and then there's a ton of like order stuff. Like somebody orders something, there's a little
Right.
communication. You got to have a history. It's basically a CRM, a customer or CRM, I think is the name, customer something management. Anyway, that's what Salesforce
Response?
basically is. I
I don't
don't
know.
know. R
Yeah.
is relationship, customer relationship management.
There you go.
That's what it is. So at any rate, like there's this massive amount of information. So the closest I'm going to get to agents, like you're speaking about, is I want to be able to have something, instead of going to the inbox and being like, I have to get through these 25 emails.
Yeah.
I want to go to the inbox and I want to review the response that it gave to all 25 emails, and then hit yes or no, or change it and hit go, or just accept it, right? And over time, what's really cool I've already established an AI, what ChatGPT calls, well, it's just in the memory of ChatGPT.
Right.
So it knows the voice of all the writing that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll literally say, I would like to express this thing
Right.
in our voice. And then it'll give 2 or 3 options. And then I will choose the option and then tell it which one I chose, so that in the memory, it basically knows what we talked about, and it also knows what we've chosen. And so now, like over the last 3 to 4 months, it effectively is mimicking us. Like we created a voice,
Right.
and it's maintaining that voice as
Mm-hmm.
it does
Response
all
to
of its
people.
writing
Right.
in responses to us, right?
Right.
It's so in that sense, it's sort of agentic. It's just not, I'm never going to be ready to be like, it's just going to automatically hit go and
Yes.
somebody
Talk to
says,
people.
"Hey, you screwed up my order," and it responds with
Well,
something that I
screw
don't know it
you.
responded
Right. Yeah.
with.
Right.
Screw you.
Then
Yeah.
screw you.
Well,
I did it on
that's your
purpose, you
fault.
you jerk. I've looked up your shopping history and you write this kind of shit on everybody's page, you prick, right? Right. I'm by the
Right,
way,
right. So
I'm
that's
sure
we'll get there.
the first person who uses Grok for their CRM is, I guarantee, going to at least like run into that happening at least once. Hey, I recognize you. You're that asshole who goes on Amazon and shits on books you've never read. Yeah, I got your number, buddy. Is this you? And then puts a picture of them in their yard on the screen. Like, so that here's, yeah. So that would be one, like a circumstance where hiring somebody to do that, it almost doesn't exist, right? Hiring a person who is a branding specialist who helps you coordinate your language for whatever, like finding
Oh,
a
that does
person.
exist.
I know they do, but
That
finding
exists for
one
sure.
that, they all, if they do
That you
work, they
like.
work in teams for Warner Brothers or Coke. But the idea that you'd
Yeah,
find
right.
like a freelance one that could work for a paycheck, that, because the amount of stuff they would have to take in to manage that and all that stuff is just enormous, right? So that would be a situation where you've added a job but not a person. It doesn't mean you've taken away from the people that you have
Right.
working for you. You've just added a role. Okay, so the Wall Street Journal, in that article that I was pointing out, is talking about how there's this weird thing happening with the economy that nobody can quite grasp except me. You're welcome. That has that has a lot to do with the fact that they're projecting this rise in GDP from what people are doing, versus the number of payroll additions there are, percentage of people added to the payrolls of companies, that it will be inverse for the, in very much in line with when things started to go online in the late 90s, early 2000s. That there was a period where, the example I would give is that if you wanted to catch a killer, you needed to hire more cops. And then the VICAP thing came online, and then you didn't need this communication between people. A cop in one area could just look up the fact that this guy they caught is actually a murderer wanted in Utah, and they found him, over here. And you didn't have to have six people answering the phones and talking to different things. If you wanted to catch this guy, you could just do it, right? So the GDP in that situation, catching these bad guys, became a lot easier, and you needed fewer people to do it, right? That there's a similar thing here with like the gross domestic product expecting a rise, and this is about expectation, but of about 3.5% over that. But that payrolls are not going negative, but they're going up at a slower rate. They're tearing down. Now that does not mean that fewer people are working necessarily, or that we have this collapse where nobody's working or people are getting fired in mass. What it means is that the GDP rise is not tied to that as much as possible. And what you have is, I think, by and large, a situation, and Mark Cuban talked about this and his use of AI, I think, at one of these little gatherings, it was here in Vegas, about how small businesses, individuals, now have at their disposal an army of bright interns. And if they start using agents for these things, you could start a company that can compete with the big dogs almost instantly. Obviously, there's some
Yeah,
benefit to
and
relationships and all that kind of stuff. It's always better to have a shit ton of money and a shit ton of employees. But if you can't manage that, if you got to start from scratch, there's never been a better time. And you could have this kind of GDP growth, which only competes with these giant, for your own company, let's say, you could only compete with giant real estate firms or giant production companies or whatever, with this many employees. So you have the world of indie being more powerful than it ever has been because of this.
yeah, and like a lot of the stuff that's happening right now, the tariffs, like a lot of the economic sort of upheaval and volatility,
Yep.
it's definitely uh, better for big companies than it is for little companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me right now, AI is like the sort of, it's the end that that small company has to still compete. It's really the
Yeah.
only one because
Right.
like with like the craziness of policy is just, it's
Right.
decimating small businesses right now.
Yeah.
So the, in these cases, like it is the tool, it's the drone in Ukraine that
Yes.
allowed Ukraine to fight the big bad Russia, right? Um, and so we are trying to embrace it in that sense, not to like get rid of jobs, but actually to create jobs when we figure out the formula that we can run a business out of, like that we can, like we have to figure out a way to sell product differently
Yeah.
that we make here in the US. We have to figure out how to like market it different and make it different and make it look different and all those things, right? So on the way from 0 to 3 jobs and then 5 jobs and then 10 jobs, like we have to use AI because we can't
Right.
do it any other way. And our government is not helping us. Like they're gone. They're out to lunch. Like I don't mean the shutdown. I mean like like like
They're meant.
organizations or departments inside of the governments, they're trolling each other. They're like trolling us now. So you can't rely on government help. You can't rely on anything. You got to go do it yourself.
Right.
And AI can allow for us to do that or can help us with that.
Right. And
And
yeah. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was just going to say that that's the sort of like that's the paradox of this AI problem is that I think that so in order for OpenAI, as just one example, to function, they have to sell a $20 subscription to anybody because they've got this like consumer driven like volume problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have access for $20 to this thing that's probably worth 25 times that in terms of
Yes.
its value to you,
Right.
right? But then the use of it is then a draw on resources. So it's really hard to like figure out how to balance those things. And so, in this moment of asymmetry, in my opinion, you've got to use the asymmetry to try to get to the spot where you're able to then create this new world where it exists amongst my 10 employees in a year or two
Right.
that I have two now, or well, technically zero because it's my brother and I, but
Right.
we own the business. My point is that, and then also like the impact on the world, it should be paid for by the people who are making the product, just like I have to pay for my impact. Like I have to pay for all the stuff
Yes.
that's here.
Right.
Then I make something and I sell it to you for more, right? Like they
Right.
have to do the same thing, or they should.
Um, I agree. I think it's interesting though that right now, we've got to. You'd have to find a way where um, you can lay that cost off to the investor and that kind of thing, without it overflowing too quickly into the cost of the device. And I would argue that the plus business model of a lot of these, like ChatGPT or like OpenAI or any of these companies, versus their pro version, which I think the Gemini Google version is like $200 a month now, because the $100 a month version. Whoops, did I lose Rob? Where'd he go? Did he bug? There he is. He bugged out. Hold on. There he goes. There you go. Lost you for a second. And Tara Devlin is waiting in the wings. I'll bring her in a second. There are a couple things that we'll look into next time. Because you can't hear me now? Oh, that's weird. All right. I'm sending you audio, so it's on your end. It's that happened on his side. So, and hold on. Let me check with something real quick. Tara, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so Tara can hear me, but Rob can't. All of a sudden, he's been attacked by an AI swarm. Hold on, let me do this. Try and listen. Let me. I'm gonna hang up on him and have him come back. Give him 1 second. Let's see. Where is he? Okay. Where is he? Let's see if he pops back in. If not, we'll talk about this more the next time he's on. Last year. Let's see. Well, okay. I'll bring in Tara Devlin if Rob pops back in. Oh, wait, there he is. Sorry, hold on. One last time. There we go. Try this. Can you hear me now?
All right. Yeah, my browser crashed. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. It happens. So I was just going to finish up on this, and Tara Devlin's waiting in the wings, and remind everybody that we're talking to Rob Glenn from Root Design, and he and I are much more bullish on this whole AI thing than everybody else is
Yeah.
for its practical function and use. But there's got to be an answer. I think we've agreed on like where the cost of it goes, and if you're not going to put it on the consumer yet, if they want to keep it at a price point where they can continue to spread and gain market ground, which is what you do, then the investors themselves have got to take a hit on this. Now that points to one big elephant in the room, which is this week OpenAI became the most is the biggest private company. It surpassed SpaceX XAI. It's now worth $500 billion, and it has yet to turn a profit. So that's one of the things, that its valuation is such that it's going in this direction. And that's where I was talking about, this Trump $17 trillion idea is where it's coming from, is that this investment is eventually, they're looking like going, it's worth 500 eventually. We're
Trust us, bro.
Trust us, bro. Exactly. And there's an element of that in the humanoid robot world that's just about to crack, and they know it. And there's going to be probably spring, you'll see 150,000 robot level production available both from the United States and China and Europe. And then it's just going to stack. By Christmas of next year, the price point for one of these robots is going to go from 30K to 7, like that. And that's the thing they're going to have to deal with.
I think physical robots are going to be different because they're physical and they marry up much closer to what we know. Like OpenAI can hide in this like cloud internet kind of like world where everybody's totally batshit crazy, right? When it comes to money. But when it's a robot, like you're buying a physical thing, it's getting delivered to you. Either it works or doesn't. And then there'll be videos of them working and there'll be videos of them not working or like failing in funny ways, right? So it is a physical product like a car is, or like anything you buy.
Right.
So it in theory should be more connected to reality.
Yes. Gravity plays a much bigger part.
Unless they all become like Tesla, where they like try to convince everybody that, there's these cars over there, but there's this other thing over here that's, worth $5 trillion when our cars might be worth 500 billion, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the sales point, that he thinks he's switching from that mechanic to this. But what is definitely true is the acceleration factor of it. There's a gathering right now in Seoul, South Korea, the IEEE RAS 24th International Conference on Humanoid Robots, and it used to be a boring little get together. That they would have, it was like everybody could like marvel at Osimo and watch a couple of little like remote control humanoid robots walking around. Now it's the autonomy is the message, and there are so many robots fucking walking around and chatting with people. It's absurd. And again, the speed by which it came is what they're extrapolating out, because you're absolutely right. And then once that happens, think how many different smartphones there are, and flip phones for people who aren't ready for a smartphone still, and iPads, and people can get calls on their laptop now. There's an element to that with robotics as well, where there's going to be a market that people aren't even aware of for calls and the like. I'm going to bring in Tara Devlin so we can get to that. But that's next time. We got to cover what I would call, hold on, let me see if I can bring it up here, because I made a graphic for us, and eventually we'll have a segment directed to it, which is AI slop. We're gonna next time we're gonna cover all the AI slop that's out there and show people
All right. Looking
the other
forward
way.
to that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm working on stuff behind the scenes for you and I. I really am. All right. I will talk
I'm
to you
going to
soon,
work
my
on
friend.
my lighting. I'm in a dungeon right now, but
Yeah.
I'm going to work on, because I'm at the
I,
shop, but I'm going
yeah.
to work on the shop.
Yes.
soon.
I feel like we're
I'll
talking
see
to
you
you
guys.
from like I'm your lawyer. And
Maybe you are.
right. All right. Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Have a good
Cheers. There he
weekend.
goes.